In the dim flicker of a single bulb hanging like a noose in the cramped kitchen of a weathered trailer on the edge of Willow Creek, 9-year-old Aaliyah huddled against the peeling linoleum, her small hands clutching her 5-year-old brother Jamal's trembling frame. The air thickened with the sharp tang of sweat and fear, broken only by the rhythmic thud of boots on the floorboards. Her stepmother loomed, eyes narrowed into slits of unyielding fury, a wooden spoon gripped like a weapon in her fist. Aaliyah's heart hammered as the first strike whistled through the air, landing with a crack that echoed like thunder in her bones. She bit her lip until it bled, whispering silent pleas into the void. Please, not him, not again. But the blows rained down, each one carving deeper into the fragile sanctuary of their shared breath. Outside, gravel crunched under tires, headlights slicing the night like accusatory fingers. The door creaked open, and heavy footsteps paused in the threshold. What secrets would spill when the father crossed that line, blind to the storm he'd married into? Aaliyah's world had always been a patchwork of faded photographs and half-remembered warmth, stitched together in the humid summers of rural Georgia. Born to a black father whose calloused hands spoke of endless fields and unyielding soil, and a mother whose laughter had once filled their shotgun shack like birdsong before cancer stole her away 2 years prior, Aaliyah learned early the weight of absence. Jamal, with his wide, trusting eyes mirroring her own deep brown ones, arrived as a squalling bundle of joy just months before the loss, binding them in a fierce, unspoken pact. Their father, Marcus, a stooped giant of a man with skin like polished mahogany and a back bowed from decades harvesting other people's dreams, had rebuilt their lives piece by fragile piece. He worked dawn to dusk at the mill, his wages barely stitching the holes in their threadbare existence, but his evenings brought stories of ancestors who bent but never broke under the lash of history. Then came Evelyn. She swept into their lives like a sudden squall, a pale wisp of a woman from the white side of town, with hair the color of corn silk and eyes that appraised everything like it was up for auction. Marcus met her at the diner where she waitressed, her smiles a balm to his loneliness, her whispers promising a stability he'd chased since girlhood slipped away. They married in a quiet courthouse ceremony, Evelyn's family absent. Their disapproval hung unspoken like smoke from a backroom cigar. To Aaliyah, Evelyn was a stranger in lace curtains and crisp aprons, her touch foreign and tentative at first, brushing Jamal's curls too roughly, eyeing Aaliyah's braids with a faint curl of her lip, as if the coils were evidence of some inherent untidiness. The trailer on the outskirts, rented with Evelyn's insistence on starting fresh, became their uneasy kingdom. It squatted on a plot of red clay that baked under the relentless sun, surrounded by pines that whispered secrets of old lynchings and unspoken sundown signs still etched in local lore. Willow Creek hadn't changed much since Marcus's grandfather fled its nooses in the 50s. The mill's white overseers still doled out shifts with favoritisms in visible hand, and the general store's shelves stocked fewer staples for those who looked like Aaliyah. Evelyn, raised in the clapboard houses where Confederate flags fluttered like defiant ghosts, carried that town's marrow in her veins. She spoke of cleaning up the trailer, of proper ways, her voice laced with a condescension that sharpened when Marcus was gone. Aaliyah noticed it first in the small things, the way Evelyn scrubbed Jamal's face until his skin stung, muttering about dirt that won't come off, or how she'd sigh at Aaliyah's report card, as if straight A's from a disadvantaged school were a miracle or a fluke. Marcus's pride swelled at the union, blind to the undercurrents, but Aaliyah's instincts, honed by playground whispers of your kind, sensed the fracture. The trailer's walls, papered in faded florals Evelyn tacked up, seemed to lean inward, trapping the scent of her stepmother's floral perfume mixed with the earthy musk of their father's sweat. Jamal, too young for words but old enough for fear, clung to Aaliyah like a shadow, his tiny fingers twisting in her shirt during Evelyn's lessons on folding laundry just so. The girl wondered as fireflies danced outside their window if love could bridge the chasm carved by centuries, or if it would only widen under the weight of unseen eyes judging from porches across the way. The tension coiled tighter with each passing day, a spring wound by Evelyn's mounting frustrations in the relentless grind of their existence. Mornings began with a sizzle of bacon she reserved for Marcus, the children left to gnaw on dry toast, while she perched at the table, flipping through magazines glossy with images of white families and manicured lawns, worlds Aaliyah could only imagine through the cracked lens of envy. School became Aaliyah's fragile escape, a brick building where teachers praised her quick mind, but overlooked the bruises blooming like ink blots on her arms, dismissed as rough housing. The bus ride home was a gauntlet of jeers from older boys, their words, "Go back to the fields, cotton picker," echoing the slur as Evelyn let slip in private, her voice a hiss when she thought no one heard. Lazy blood. That's what it is. Afternoons blurred into chores that Evelyn piled on with the precision of a taskmaster, her pale hands gesturing sharply as Aaliyah scrubbed floors on her knees until they ached, Jamal trailing with a dustpan too big for his grasp. "See how they dawdle," Evelyn would mutter to herself, her reflection in the window revealing a tightness around her mouth, as if the children's very presence soiled her vision of domestic bliss. The racial undercurrent festered in these moments. Evelyn's resentment a toxic brew stirred by the town's whispers, neighbors who nodded at Marcus but crossed streets when Aaliyah and Jamal approached, store clerks who shortchanged them with a smirk. Evelyn absorbed it all, her affection for Marcus curdling into a possessive fury directed at his baggage, the children who reminded her daily of the line she'd crossed, the social suicide of loving across the color bar. One sweltering Thursday, the breaking point loomed closer. Marcus had come home late, his face etched with the exhaustion of another docked pay for attitude, a penalty the white workers escaped. Evelyn's eyes flashed as she served his plate, her body language a silent accusation. "This is what you bring me?" Aaliyah, peeking from the hallway, caught the way her stepmother's fingers tightened on the serving spoon, knuckles blanching against the dark wood. Jamal, oblivious, knocked over a glass of milk in his eagerness, the spill spreading like a pale accusation across the floor. Evelyn's face contorted, a mask of barely contained rage, and she snatched a towel, shoving it at Aaliyah with such force that the girl stumbled back. "Clean it up, girl. Can't have nice things around here." As the week wore on, the air grew heavier, laced with Evelyn's sidelong glances at the children, her mutterings about welfare cases she'd overheard at the diner, code for the systemic chains that kept families like theirs tethered to poverty's edge. Aaliyah shielded Jamal as best she could, diverting his questions about why Mama E looked at them funny, her own heart a drumbeat of dread. She remembered her mother's stories of Jim Crow's shadows, how hate hid in polite smiles and locked doors, and saw its echo in Evelyn's growing isolation, refusing Marcus's invitations to the black church barbecue, claiming headaches when community elders stopped by with pies. By Friday, the pressure cooker hissed. Marcus announced overtime, leaving Evelyn alone with the children from noon to dusk. She paced, her shadow long and jagged, the spoon she'd used for stirring soup now an extension of her fraying control. Aaliyah felt it in her gut, the inevitability, as Jamal's innocent spill of crayons across the table became the spark. Evelyn's voice rose, not in words but in the slam of cabinets, the stomp that shook the floor. The girl pulled her brother close, her mind racing through escape routes, the back door too far, the phone line cut last month for unpaid bills. The emotional stakes peaked as Evelyn's eyes locked on them, devoid of the fleeting tenderness she'd shown Marcus, filled instead with the distilled venom of a town that taught her to see them as less. In that gaze, Aaliyah saw not just a woman's unraveling, but the face of systemic rot, where personal hate bloomed from societal soil, ready to crush the tender shoots of innocence. The assault erupted like a dam burst, raw and unstoppable, in the sweltering heart of the afternoon. Evelyn's hand shot out, seizing Jamal by his arm with a grip that twisted his tiny frame, yanking him from Aaliyah's protective circle. The boy's cry pierced the air, a high wail that clawed at the girl's throat, but she lunged forward, her own arms wrapping around his waist in desperate futility. Evelyn's free hand swung the wooden spoon in a vicious arc, the impact on Jamal's back resounding with a meaty thud that vibrated through Aaliyah's chest. The child bucked, his legs kicking wildly, but Evelyn pinned him against the counter, her breaths coming in ragged huffs, face flushed with a rage that transcended the moment. Fueled by the day's slights, the town's murmurs, the mirror that reflected her own diminished status in marrying down. Aaliyah's world narrowed to the blur of motion,
her pleas forming in her mind as frantic, wordless begs, eyes wide, hands outstretched, her body interposing itself between the storm and her brother. She tugged at Evelyn's sleeve, the fabric slipping through her fingers like hope, but the woman shrugged her off with a snarl of effort, the spoon descending again, this time glancing off Aaliyah's shoulder in a bloom of fire. Pain exploded, white hot, but the girl didn't falter. She dropped to her knees, cradling Jamal's head as he curled into a ball, his sobs muffled against her neck. Evelyn loomed above, her shadow engulfing them, the spoon raised high for another strike, her eyes glassy with a fervor that bordered on trance, unleashing not just frustration, but the pent-up scorn of a lifetime steeped in supremacy's lies, where brown skin was synonymous with defiance deserving correction. The blows alternated now, her arm a pendulum of fury, catching Jamal's thigh, then Aaliyah's